Listen, we're going to talk about the Leafs real quick. I got a fake Leafs jersey. I've had this forever, but I haven't invested in a real jersey. I'm still working on collecting all the jerseys. Um, Luckily, I got my money back for this, and the person was like, "Yeah, just keep the jersey. It's whatever." Um, so I do want to show some love, I guess, to Toronto because I've been called out on not having a jersey, even though I have this. But I don't really like wearing fake jerseys, so I just disclaimer. If you see this, and you're like, "What is that?" I don't know. I got it in the mail. Anyway, we're going to talk about the Leafs. I want to talk about why they're not exceeding expectations or even meeting expectations. They're off to kind of a slow start. We know historically they're typically off to slow starts. This is pretty much on par, but they're not playing well at home, and they're not playing good defense at all. The goals against is kind of atrocious. Let's get into it. We'll start with the defense. I forgot to rewrite the goalies up here. Woll is your starter. He's 4-4, a 913 save percentage. He's played very well. Samsonov, formerly Samsonov, 2-1, 855 save percentage. Not great. Both guys are capable of probably bumping up that save percentage a bit. Credit to Wall. I think he's played fantastic whenever he's played in the NHL. I think some of his play in Toronto is very underappreciated this year. I know he's appreciated, but I think he is that good. So I think both of those guys, Wall could be, a consistent 9-18 guy. Samsonov, probably like a 9, between like a 908 and maybe like a 913 save percentage guy, which is still pretty good. Defense, though, these lines I just took from Cap Friendly, Daily Faceoff. I know some of them are kind of jumbled. I know Klingberg's played a lot, and everything has him as a healthy scratch now, which I can't really disagree with. Anyway, Riley, Brody on that first line, Giordano McCabe second line, Legasson, I think it's Benoit. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't looked up how to pronounce his name. I haven't really paid attention, but I assume it's pronounced Benoit. It's probably not Benoit. But where are the breakdowns in this defense? We're just gonna start off talking about the defense real quick. Mike Riley, offensive defenseman. Is he okay in his own zone? Sure, he's okay, but he's not great. He's not a reliable, steady defensive defenseman. He's sometimes caught out of positions, but you know what? That's okay because that's kind of what you expect from an offensive defenseman. He's not a two-way defenseman, right? He's not a defensive defenseman. He's an offensive defenseman, which means there are going to be defensive deficiencies that come up, but that his big part of his game is offense. Kind of a question mark with Riley on defense. I don't want to give this guy more credit than he deserves in his own zone. I don't think he's the worst offensive defenseman in his zone. I don't think he's terrible. He's pretty solid defensively for an offensive defenseman, but I wouldn't classify him as a two-way defenseman by any means of the term. I don't think he's that good in terms of his defense. His offensive game's fine. It's great. He's good on the power play. There's a defensive issue with Riley, and that's okay. That's expected. That was expected before he was drafted by the Maple Leafs. This isn't and shouldn't be a surprise. Brody, honestly, fine. Could he elevate his play a little bit? Sure. But honestly, one of the more steady defensemen on this team. Giordano really starting to show his age, showing when he's a little slower. Still a very cerebral player, still smart. But we're not quite seeing the defensive play he has given teams the past, decade and a half plus of his career. He's an older guy. How old is he? How old is Giordano? Giordano is 40. Okay. I thought he was 38. No, he's 40. So for his age, honestly, he's playing well. But it's one of those things where he may be out of position because he wasn't able to react just in time. The game is getting a lot faster every single year. That's okay. Jake McCabe spent a good amount on injury. He's played 7 of, 13 games so far. McCabe, pretty steady in his own zone, pretty solid defensive defenseman. I like McCabe. I can't throw any shade at McCabe. I think he's held his own this year in terms of what was expected of him. I think he's actually exceeded that, to be honest. And the third line, it's definitely a question mark. Are you going to get defense? Are you not? I don't know. I don't really want to talk about the third line because you got 2 other guys that probably should be in the lineup. Liljegren obviously is hurt. I'm not talking about that. I'm a Bruins fan. I have opinions. there are opinions out there. Doesn't really matter. The fact is that Liljegren is hurt, and it's unfortunate, and that's a piece that Toronto's missing. However, Liljegren in his own zone, probably not the greatest. He's exceeded my expectations by a long shot. He was with the Capitals, right? And he was expected to really step up in this offensive way. Wasn't quite doing it. Off to Toronto he goes. Honestly, I think his defensive game is a lot better than I ever thought it could be already. So I got to give him that. However, it's not great. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. If he's not going to produce offense, if he's not going to produce points, there's still plenty of work that needs to be done with this guy. Right? John Klingberg, though, this is the biggest head scratcher to me. This is a head scratcher coming into the season. Right? Watching his last season in Dallas, watching most of last year with Anaheim on a historically bad defense. Historically bad. John Klingberg was playing a big part of that defense, too. Then goes to Minnesota and is he was awful. He wasn't good. He is okay with the puck. He can dangle. He scored a couple goals in clutch situations, and that was great. But it's an absolute adventure in his own zone. Dallas is like, Jim Nill over in Dallas, the GM of the Dallas Stars, like, yeah, that's what I thought, Klingberg. You weren't worth that $8 million a year for, 7 years? So paying this guy $4.125 million was insane to me to begin with. The Wild wouldn't even entertain that. I think Bill Guerin spoke out and was like, yeah, we can't, even if we had the cap space, we weren't going to match that dollar amount for John Klingberg. Which should tell you something, right? The Wild, not the most offensively potent team, need a power play quarterback. Obviously, they traded out Kalen Addison. Like, something wasn't working there, right? Klingberg, adventure in his own zone, not very good defensively at all. But, there's enough here to get by. The game is changing. You're relying more on your defense to produce offense, and that is perfectly okay. A lot of teams are transitioning to this system, and it's worked out for almost every team. So it's the forwards I really want to emphasize. You need more defense from your forwards, okay? There are 5 guys on the ice at any time, excluding the goalie and excluding power plays and special teams. Right, a majority of the game is played 5 skaters on 5 skaters. Okay, if you're shooting on a team that only has 2 players defending, you are probably going to score goals. There is a significantly higher probability that team is going to score on you. That doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, and I like rocket science. That's just a side note. Okay, so first line. I think we saw Yarncrook on that first line. Bertuzzi was on that first line. As of right now, Daily Faceoff, Cap Friendly both have Nyes, Matthew, and Marner on that first line. Second line, Bertuzzi, Tavares, Nylander. Third line, Nick Robertson. Fingers crossed, this kid could be good. Fingers crossed, man. I almost said Ty Domi, Max Domi, and Kelly Yarncrook. Noah Gregor, Kampf, and Reeves. Pontus Holmberg, they have as a healthy scratch. You're not getting enough defense from this group. That, for me, is entirely on the coach. The coach needs to push this defensive narrative. They need to find a balance offensively and defensively. That's great. You can put up as many goals as the rest of them, but so can the Buffalo Sabres. And guess what? The Sabres missed the playoffs last year. You need to do a little better than that. Okay. Last year, there was a bunch of injuries to the defensive core, and some of these guys that came in were solid, steady defensive defensemen, which helped cover up some of these defensive liabilities from your forwards. Okay, so first line, we'll start off. Matthew Nyes, literally his rookie year. Young guys take some time to transition to a two-way game at the NHL level. That is okay. There shouldn't be much expected from Matthew Nyes defensively. He's not terrible defensively. He'll forecheck. He'll come on the back check. Like, he's okay. There's a lot of work to do there, but he's still, he's a rookie, and, you can't shame a guy for that. Matthews and Marner are both capable of playing elite defense in their own zone. We know this. They've both gotten Selke votes. They both play on the when the team is shorthanded, right? When the other team has power play, they're on the ice. When it's 5-on-5, you don't see any of these guys hustling back to the zone. You don't see a single guy covering the third man back for the other team. That is an issue. That leads to a lot of 3-on-2s, okay? So I'll give a majority of the blame to Matthews and Marner on that. You need to play more of a 200-foot game. Sure, offense gets you salaries and money, but defense wins you games and wins you championships. Second line, Bertuzzi. I honestly, so it's a little conflicting. Bertuzzi took a while to, not until the playoffs really get acclimated to life in Boston and playing with the Bruins, where he just broke out and started popping off, and he was great, right? We haven't seen Bertuzzi even play the number of games he played in Boston where he started to really start producing. He's still new. It's still a new team to him, new environment, new line mates, new teammates, new culture. There's a lot. He's brand new. You're paying him a good amount, and it's only for a year. I understand the frustration. I get it. But you got to be patient with this guy. But my issue was on the first line. I think I watched the first 2 games of the Leafs. Bertuzzi was the only one hustling back to play defense when it was 5-on-5. And then you know what he did? He stopped because nobody else on the team was. And he only got criticisms for not scoring enough goals or not producing offensively. Okay? So he gets moved down to the second line, that's fine. But you also have Tavares and Nylander, who don't even know what defense is at this point. Tavares has been capable years ago in New York Islanders. He showed he could at least play defense. Whether he did or not was kind of a crapshoot. But Tavares doesn't play defense on this team. Neither does Nylander. 5-on-5, there's a reason these guys are never plus players. Right? They score a ton of points, a ton of goals. So do Matthew and Marner. They should honestly be, Anyway. But Nylander, you don't see him in the defensive zone. And if you do, it's rare. Okay? That's not acceptable. You need players to skate back, cover that third guy down, cover that fourth guy down. If the other team has 3 guys by the net, one of those guys has to drive down and help the defense. This is basic stuff you learn, and I don't even know what the levels are because I never played hockey as a kid. One of my biggest regrets, I was baseball all the time, but this is something you learn at Pee-wees or whatever. Squirts. I think you should have that down before squirts. I think. I worked at a hockey rink with a bunch of, I know a lot, but so again, same issue with Bertuzzi. Is he going to produce offensively? He might not, because he's always going to be the first forward back in his defensive zone and probably the last forward in the offensive zone. That's an issue. You need more defense by committee to really help out your defense. Because what's your issue? You're giving up too many goals. That is not okay. You need to do better on defense. Okay. You got Wall. Fine. Decent goalie. That's great. Samsonov as a backup is fine. Okay. There are much worse backups you could have. Your defensive core isn't that bad, assuming Klingberg is scratched. Okay. And it can produce a little bit offensively. That's fine. Okay. But you can't rely on 2 players and a goalie to stop a team of 5 that is shooting and passing on you all day. That has been the main issue, okay? And we can get into the lack of production from the bottom 6, and that's fair, right? Domi, you kind of expect to be, 15, 20 goals, really, mucking it up down in the slums. Yarncrook has a decent shot. I don't know. Third line guy, definitely. But he played well on the first line with Marners and Matthew last year. Last year, yeah. It wasn't that long ago. When they were playing defense, he could jump up in the play and produce offensively. It worked. Okay? You gotta play defense. We're going back to that. Nick Robertson, young kid. Probably not. I don't think I've even seen him. Have I seen him play this year? That's a good question. I don't think so. He's only played 2 games. Under 12 minutes a game. I don't know. But Nick Robertson, maybe he's not up to par defensively, but he's a rookie. He's young. He's really young. Is he 19, 20? He's 22. Okay, a little older than I thought. But still. Max Domi. can provide some defense to you. I don't really recall him playing defense, but, to be honest, I wasn't really looking for Max Domi's defensive play when I was watching Leafs games, because when your top 6 forwards take up a majority of your forward ice time, you expect some defense from them. And those are the players you watch. And when they don't play any defense and the other team is scoring on them like nobody's business, that is a glaring issue that is hard to take. That's very distracting. It takes away from really the rest of the play of the team. Okay. Last line, you got Camp. Reeves is a bit of a defensive liability. He's again, he was on Minnesota last year. I watched him. He was traded to Minnesota, but I think it was like in November, maybe early December. But a majority of the year, he was in Minnesota. He's a great guy, great locker room guy. Can stick up for his teammates. Again, I'm not diving into his whole physical play, but he plays the role more or less of an enforcer in a league where you're not finding too many enforcers. You got a few, you got a handful, right? You got like Delorier and what's it called, Philadelphia. But Delorier is very good defensively and can really help a team out who's shorthanded, right? Some of these other enforcers have other responsibilities, and some of them aren't taking stupid penalty calls if they're like the shorthand, like, I don't know, winger, for example. Okay, Reeves, you're not going to get much offense from him. You're not going to get much defense from him. You're not going to get great passing from him. You're not going to get a great shot from him. He's got great hand-eye coordination. He's a great person to just have in front of the net, just deflecting pucks. I don't even think I think I've seen him deflect like 2 pucks in his entire career. Great guy. Don't hate the guy. But also, like, still a bit of a defensive liability. Noah Gregor, I watched a game with him. I don't remember how he performed. And Camp, I really haven't watched him play all that much this year. Holmberg was okay. He was skating back a little bit defensively. But I don't really think the bottom 6 is necessarily your issue when it comes to preventing goals against. Could they do a better job? Sure. Especially this 4th line. This 4th line has been brutal. It's been rough. Gregor has been rough. But for me, it's the top 2 lines. They need to set the tone. They need to set the pace. They need to set the example for the rest of your team. Okay, you got your captain not playing defense. You got your alternate captain, Matthews. This is a fake Matthews jersey. Not playing captain. I don't even know who the other alternate captain is because I don't care, because it doesn't matter, because they're not leading by example. Okay, I'm a Bruins fan, and I'm frustrated for Leaf fans that have to watch this. You can't just leave all the defense on the table to the defensive players. It's a team game. The defense is expected to contribute offensively. The offense should be expected to contribute defensively. You can't just leave your goalie and 2 D-men high and dry for 60 minutes a game. That's how you lead to goals against. That's a lot to ask of a defensive pairing, especially like a defensive pairing which has one offensive defenseman, right? That's a lot to ask. I don't know. This is my little rant. It's not that these guys are bad or incapable. They're just not playing defense. It's not like they're trying to play defense. They're not even trying to play defense, and it's blatant and it's obvious. And for me, that starts at coaching. Like, the coach needs to address this, and this has been the issue with other teams too. I talked about it on this channel. The Senators are very familiar. Senators, I don't think, have been as bad defensively from the forwards as this group. You got guys like Claude Giroux, and you got players in your top 6 that are very good defensively in Ottawa. This team, I don't know. Who's your one guy is Bertuzzi, who can play defense, and he has a spotty track record when playing defense, going back to his Detroit days. He can play defense, and he's not bad at it, but it's about consistency with him. But you're not getting any consistency from 4 of your top 6 forwards, and that's my biggest issue. It doesn't just start with your captain or your alternate captains. I think the other alternate captain might be Morgan Riley, right? But that's a coaching issue. That's not a general manager issue for the most part. You can make moves, you can trade, you can kind of keep it a little interesting. But for me, that's something obvious the coaching should see, adjust to, and fix. We saw this in Vancouver. Vancouver, very good offensive team. Their defense was horrible for years. What do? They bring in a coach who wants to play more of a defensive style of hockey? Guess what happens? They're winning hockey. It's crazy, right? So this is like what some of the better teams do. They're very good defensively, and their forwards play defense. Colorado Avalanche, great example, right? I hate rooting for Colorado or giving them credit. They're a good team, and they play defense. They play team defense well. Boston Bruins, great example of team defense. You go to the New York Islanders. Bruins Islanders, probably not the most exciting hockey teams to watch this year, to be honest. Defensive hockey, forwards, a whole team defense hockey. Okay, there's an ongoing theme here. The playoff teams you usually see play defensive hockey. Tampa Bay Islanders, oh my God. That's when you know this video is getting too long. Yeah, 20 minutes. Tampa Bay Lightning, defensive team hockey. It's a common theme, okay? Carolina Hurricanes, a great example. Defensive team hockey. That's how they win hockey games. Especially with having 3 offensive defensemen of your 6 defensemen who aren't elite defensively. You need help from your forwards to come back, play defense, and really unleash the offensive potential of your offensive defensemen. Okay. These aren't new concepts. These aren't like renowned concepts. But team defensive hockey is one of the most important things to winning in the NHL. And you can kind of get away with really focusing on offense, but you can't completely just neglect it because it will come back to bite you as it is with the Leafs. And again, I'm going back to this. I think, this really starts with the coach. It really starts with Sheldon Keefe and his staff, his team, the assistant coaches. This needs to be a priority. And, so I guess this rant kind of started from, I peruse the YouTubes every once in a while. I see the, why are the Leafs not doing good? And all of the blame gets shifted to the defensive core and the goaltender. And Wall hasn't been that bad. He's been pretty solid. Samsonov hasn't been great. But when you also see the goals that are let in, there are some, on Samsonov, there have been some severe, and I mean severe defensive lapses from the team in front of him. If you're facing a 3-on-1 multiple times in a period, there's no way you're saving everyone. That is not physically possible. You can take Linus Ullmark from last year, Shesterkin from the year before. They are not saving all those shots. And those are historic seasons from a goaltender. I just want to throw that out there. It's not just on the defensive team. It's not just on the defense. It's not just on the goalie. It's on the entire team. And it really starts with your forwards. And we see this a lot addressed in Minnesota. When their defense isn't playing well, it's not the defensive players that aren't playing well. It's the whole team that's not playing defense. It's Kirill Kaprizov not coming back and back checking. It's, Ryan Hartman not covering the point guy as a center. Not covering that third guy coming back down the ice in the offensive zone. It's things like that. Those lead to goals. Odd man rushes lead to goals. If you're not containing the odd man rushes, which your forwards help with, and mind you, can eliminate, you're going to let in goals. And goals against is a huge reason why this team has not gotten off to a good start. We've seen this adjust last year due to injuries, but we will see. You need more, and hate me all you want. You can't say the core 4 players are blameless in this. Yes, they are producing offensively at a great clip, and honestly, all 4 of them look fantastic offensively. Can't throw any shade at that. Matthews, a goal a game. Tavares has had a lot of scoring chances. Nylander's working magic with the puck. He's deking all over. And Marner's just a passing genius. Like, the dude just has vision like no other. But these are all guys, at least 3 of these guys are more than capable of at least contributing some defense. And the level of defense they have to contribute really shouldn't affect their offensive production at all anyway. This is frustrating. So when you say the core 4 aren't blameless, they totally are if they're only playing half of the game you need to play to win a hockey game. Okay, it's not like they're not playing much defense. They're playing no defense. 0. It's bad. That is not okay. So that is my rant. I am done. We're 25 minutes in. I'm all worked up. But I just keep seeing videos on YouTube and blaming certain players, and no. I've watched enough Leafs and I've watched enough hockey to know there's more to that. That's not, you can't just blame 2 of 5 people on the ice, and have it consistent throughout all 3 lines, right? You got 12 forwards and 6 defensemen. That doesn't make sense. Okay, that's done. I appreciate you. Obviously, let me know what you think. If you disagree, that is okay. I'm not a hockey coach. I'm not a general manager. I don't work in the hockey industry. I didn't grow up playing hockey. I grew up loving hockey and watching it and being around hockey. But, your opinion is just as valid as mine. So I appreciate you guys watching. Excuse the dog hair. It's been bothering me this whole time on my hat. All right, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you guys, and take care, all right?